Today, we are diving into a claim that is so startling it really makes you rethink the very nature of American law. We're going to investigate a kind of hidden history, one that suggests the U.S. government has been playing by a different set of rules for almost a century.
So let's just get right to it with the central question. Is it even possible that the United States has been in a constant, undeclared state of national emergency for 90 years? I know, it sounds absolutely crazy, but the evidence we're about to walk through presents a really compelling case. According to the source material, a really detailed constitutional analysis, the answer is yes, and it points to the exact date this all kicked off, March 9th, 1933. Just think about that. That's 90 years of governing under special emergency powers that started way back in the Great Depression, and as we're going to see, they never really stopped.
Now, this isn't some fringe theory. This is pulled directly from a 1973 Special Senate Committee report on national emergencies. Let that sink in for a second. Congress itself admitted that for 40 years, at that point, a majority of Americans had lived their entire lives under emergency rules.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll try to get our heads around the sheer scope of this 90-year emergency. Then we'll zero in on the specific 1933 event that started it all. After that, we'll put it to the constitutional test, look at the supreme law of the land, and finally, we'll get to what the source calls an inescapable conclusion. So first stop, we need to understand this core idea. How in the world did a temporary measure somehow become a permanent state of affairs? That same Senate report found that for 4 straight decades, the government had been using these emergencies to govern without reference to normal constitutional processes. You know, that phrase is everything. It's basically saying that huge decisions on the economy, the military, you name it, could be made by just bypassing the standard established rules of American law.
So how did this even happen? Well, it all goes back to one single moment and one single law, the Emergency Banking Act of 1933. And the way this thing was passed, wow, it set a precedent that would just echo for decades to come. When you dig into the congressional record, the whole process was it was anything but normal. First off, members of Congress voted on the bill without even having a copy to read. Can you imagine? Second, debate was shut down after just 40 minutes. Third, when some members demanded a recorded vote, they were just denied. And get this, to top it all off, Congress didn't even know who wrote the bill. This wasn't just some rushed law, it basically became the playbook for governing without reference to normal processes.
And this, right here, brings us to the most fundamental question in this entire investigation. Is any of this actually legal? I mean, does the U.S. Constitution have some kind of emergency escape hatch that lets the government just set aside its own rulebook? You know, the Constitution is incredibly specific about this. It only contains one single suspension clause. It's for the writ of habeas corpus. That's your right to challenge your detention in court, and it only applies in cases of rebellion or invasion. The source argues there is absolutely zero authorized power to suspend any other right or procedure. No fine print, no loopholes.
This whole idea of constitutional limits gets even clearer when you look at the Bill of Rights. I mean, take the First Amendment. It doesn't say Congress shall make no law unless there's an emergency. It says Congress shall make no law. According to this legal analysis, that word no is absolute. It means what it says.
Okay, let's keep building on this. Now we're going to look at the highest legal authorities in the nation. So, beyond just the text of the Constitution itself, what do the bedrock principles of American law have to say about these emergency powers?
Well, there are 3 pillars of the Constitution that make this crystal clear. Article 6 says the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It's above any president, any Congress. Article 1 says that all legislative powers belong to Congress. They can't just be invented out of thin air because of an emergency. And then the 10th Amendment is the final backstop. If a power isn't explicitly given to the federal government, it belongs to the people, period.
And hey, this isn't a new idea. This principle was locked in place over 200 years ago in the huge Supreme Court case Marbury versus Madison. Chief Justice John Marshall's ruling was just unequivocal. If a law passed by Congress goes against the Constitution, that law is void. It's totally meaningless.
Even the president's power has very clear lines. In another famous Supreme Court opinion, Justice Robert Jackson wrote that a president's power is at its absolute weakest, its lowest ebb, when he acts against the Constitution. The entire system is designed to prevent rule by decree, not to enable it. So we've walked through the historical record from Congress itself, and we've examined the supreme law of the land. Now it's time to bring it all together for the final verdict of this constitutional investigation.
Okay, let's just summarize the case one more time. The Constitution has no general emergency override button. The only suspension it allows for is habeas corpus. The amendments are written in absolute terms, like no law. And maybe most damning, Congress itself admitted to bypassing normal constitutional processes. When you line all that up, there's really only one conclusion you can draw.
And this all leads to the source's ultimate argument, what lawyers call a compulsory conclusion of law. It's the idea that the emergency regime that began in 1933 operated without any constitutional basis, and therefore any government actions that relied on those specific extra-constitutional emergency powers are themselves constitutionally defective.
And that leaves us with one final, really profound question to think about. See, this whole analysis, it isn't just a history lesson. It has massive implications for today. If a government operates outside its own founding charter, its own supreme law, what does that mean for the legitimacy of the laws it creates under that authority? That right there, that is the inescapable question at the very heart of this 90-year emergency.